When Ethan Maddox got down on one knee, I thought I'd finally have a moment that was mine. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon in the Pisgah forest where the trees arch overhead like a cathedral. No crowd, no hidden photographer, just us and the kind of silence that holds something sacred. Ethan, my partner of 7 years, held out a simple ring. No diamonds, just a vintage band I'd once admired in a small antique shop. I said yes without hesitation. I didn't cry. I just felt still, like everything in my life had finally landed where it belonged. The next day, I called my mother, Lynette Hale. She lives about an hour away in Statesville, retired from teaching now, mostly concerned with garden club meetings and my younger half-sister Harper. I thought she'd be thrilled, maybe even cry. Instead, after the first few pleasantries, she said, "Have you told Harper yet? You know how fragile she is lately." That was it. Not congratulations. Not, "Tell me everything." Just a soft sigh and a name that wasn't mine. Harper Hale is 25, my mother's daughter with her second husband. She's a lifestyle influencer, or at least she was. After a very public breakup with her Instagram husband last summer, she vanished from social media for weeks. The last time we spoke, she'd posted a teary-eyed video about betrayal and healing in private. So, yes, I suppose in my mother's mind, my engagement came at an inconvenient time. For Harper. I paused, waiting for my mother to say more. She didn't. I remember staring at the phone, wondering what was worse, that she saw my joy as a threat, or that she genuinely didn't notice I was hurting. I brushed it off. I told myself maybe she was just caught off guard. Maybe she'd come around. Maybe she'd remember this was my life, my moment, and not Harper's. But deep down, I already knew. That call wasn't just a letdown, it was a warning. For the next few weeks, I tried to move past that call. I let myself believe it was just an awkward moment, a poorly timed response. I convinced myself my mother was simply trying to protect Harper, but that eventually she'd celebrate with me. Ethan and I started planning. We booked a February wedding at a small lodge in Boone, North Carolina, somewhere peaceful, nestled in the mountains, surrounded by friends who didn't need to be convinced I mattered. We picked burgundy and ivory as our colors. Simple flowers, good food, a guest list of 70, intimate, intentional. Then Harper announced her engagement. It was exactly 5 weeks after mine. Her post went viral, her on a rooftop holding hands with a man I'd never seen before, the caption, "When you know, you know." January can't come fast enough. His name was Drew, apparently a DJ based out of Charlotte. They'd met at a launch party 2 months prior. I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything when she booked a venue at a modern rustic winery not 15 miles from ours. I didn't say anything when I found out she'd hired the same florist I'd been working with for weeks. And I didn't say anything when she posted a picture of a gown strikingly similar to the one I'd already picked, right down to the lace back and cap sleeves. People started messaging me. "Wait, didn't you already choose that dress style? Isn't that your venue?" I smiled. I said it was just a coincidence. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, like I always had. But inside, something twisted. Not jealousy. Not even anger. It was that familiar ache, the one you feel when your place in the family is not just overlooked, but actively overwritten. Harper had always had a flair for drama. As kids, she once told our teacher I hit her just because she didn't like the grade I got. At 16, she crashed our neighbor's car and let me take the blame until my stepfather caught her lying. Still, I held my tongue. She got married in January in a lavish, over-filtered ceremony streamed live on her social media channels. I watched 15 minutes of it, then closed the screen. 6 weeks later, they separated. 2 weeks after that, she filed for divorce. Drew had cheated with her best friend, no less. It was messy, public, humiliating. I didn't gloat. I didn't say a word. I texted her. Once. Just, "I'm sorry you're hurting. If you need anything, I'm here." She never replied. She didn't need comfort. She needed a villain. And I was always cast too easily in that role. By early November, Ethan and I had finalized nearly everything for the wedding. The venue was booked. The deposits were paid. We'd mailed out the invitations, each one sealed by hand, with names written in the same cursive I'd practiced since junior high. I remember feeling finally at peace. Like maybe despite the tension the drama had quieted. That lasted 48 hours. I got the call on a Thursday morning. It was my mother, and that in itself was strange. She rarely called. Texts maybe, once a month at best, but this time she dialed directly. "Hi, sweetheart," she began. Her tone was overly sweet, like someone about to ease you into bad news. I was folding laundry when she asked, "So, you're really going through with the wedding?" I hesitated. "Of course. Everything's set." There was a long pause. Then that sigh. "I've come to recognize it. It's the sound of a boundary about to be crossed." "Well," she said slowly, "I've been thinking about Harper, and I really think you should reconsider." I blinked. Reconsider what? She took a breath. Everything. The timing. The size of it. Maybe just do something smaller. A church ceremony, close family only. Keep it quiet. She's still grieving Juliana. You know that. Grieving Harper's whirlwind marriage had ended just over a month ago. She hadn't lost a spouse of 20 years. She'd gotten burned in a relationship she'd rushed into against every warning sign, but apparently my mother now saw her as a widow. "Mom," I said carefully, "we've been planning this for nearly a year. It's not about Harper. She's hurting." She pressed. "She cried all night when she saw your invitation." That was when I felt it, the old bitter pull of guilt, the one that whispers, if someone else is unhappy, you must be the cause. I kept my voice even. "That's not fair. This wedding has nothing to do with her." She snapped. "If you really loved your sister, you'd wait, just until she's stronger." I ended the call soon after. That night, Ethan came into the room holding his phone, brow furrowed. "Your mom called me," he said. I froze. What she said, I was the reasonable one, that I'd understand why a big wedding would hurt Harper, that maybe I could talk you into scaling back. I sat down. Hard. "She called you behind my back." He nodded. I told her no, that we weren't changing anything. I swallowed the knot rising in my throat. It was no longer just about Harper's feelings. It was about control, soft-handed, guilt-laced control. And that was something I was done surrendering to. By Thanksgiving, things had shifted from uncomfortable to unbearable. I'd started noticing it in subtle ways. A cousin who used to call every few weeks stopped replying to texts. My Aunt Denise, usually the first to ask about wedding updates, sent me a vague message. Maybe just give Harper space. She's been through so much. It was the phrase everyone kept repeating. She's been through so much. As if that somehow made my engagement a personal attack. Then came the whispers. My cousin Megan, bless her, had been quietly keeping me informed. Harper's been calling people she told me in a low voice over the phone. "She's saying you picked your wedding date just to rub salt in the wound. That you always try to one-up her." I felt like I'd been punched. I hadn't spoken to Harper in weeks. I'd chosen our date almost a year ago, long before her impulsive engagement, long before her divorce. But logic didn't seem to matter anymore. Perception was everything, and Harper was painting me as the villain. When I told Ethan, he wasn't surprised. "She needs someone to blame," he said, "and you've always been the easiest target." Thanksgiving dinner was at my Aunt Tessa's house that year. I almost didn't go, but Ethan convinced me. "You have every right to be there," he said. So I went holding my breath the entire drive. The atmosphere was stiffer than usual. Harper was already there when we arrived, seated in the living room like a wounded princess. She wore all white. Her hair was curled perfectly. Her expression blank but fragile, like she might shatter if anyone spoke too loudly. We greeted her politely. She nodded but didn't say much. I tried to keep to myself, quietly chatting with Aunt Tessa about flowers, peonies, ranunculus, whether they'd hold up in February. And then it happened. Harper suddenly stood up, shaking her head as her eyes filled with tears. "I can't do this," she whispered loudly. "I can't sit here while she talks about that wedding like nothing happened to me." Everyone went silent. My mother rushed to her side, arms around her instantly. Harper buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "She's right," my mother said, looking directly at me. You're being inconsiderate, Juliana. You have no idea what this is doing to her. My hands clenched in my lap. I felt everyone's eyes on me. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stood and said quietly, "This wedding isn't about Harper. It never was." Harper's face twisted. "You've always thought you're better than me." I looked at my mother, waiting for her to step in. She didn't. I left early that night. I didn't sleep the night after Thanksgiving. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Ethan's breathing soft beside me. My body was still, but my mind wouldn't stop moving. Every word Harper had said, every look I'd gotten around that table, and worst of all, the silence from my mother. It was all louder in the dark. By morning, I'd made my decision. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and drafted the email. It wasn't angry. I didn't see the point. Anger would only give them something to use against me. No, I wrote it the same way I'd draft a project notice at work, calmly, clearly, with documentation. I addressed it to both my mother and Harper. Subject: regarding the wedding. Mom. Harper. Over the past several months, I've done my best to remain respectful even as lines were crossed. I've ignored passive-aggressive comments, tolerated mischaracterizations, and tried to extend grace. But recent actions, including the public confrontation at Thanksgiving and repeated attempts to guilt me into canceling my wedding, have made it clear that your presence at the event would not be supportive or peaceful. For my well-being and peace of mind, I am formally rescinding your invitations. I wish you both healing, but I cannot allow this pattern to continue into one of the most important days of my life. Juliana. I reread it twice, then hit send. My hands shook for a few seconds after. But beneath the tremble, something else was rising relief. By lunch, my mother replied, "I never thought my daughter would betray her own family like this. You've chosen a man over your blood. If your father were alive, he'd be ashamed." Classic. There it was, the weaponized memory of my father. My mother's favorite tool when she wanted to cut deep without raising her voice. I didn't reply. A few hours later, Harper's email came through. Long, chaotic, full of contradictions. She accused me of being jealous, claimed I'd always hated her, said I was punishing her for expressing her feelings. Her closing line read, "You'll regret this. One day you'll realize you destroyed this family." I stared at that line for a long time. Funny. I'd spent 30 years being told to keep the peace. Smile. Be the bigger person. Absorb the blow. But now, for the first time, I wasn't absorbing anything. I was stepping out of range. And the silence I received in return wasn't emptiness. It was air. Clean, cold, honest air. Sometimes peace doesn't come from fixing the noise. It comes from walking away from the people who keep making it. It happened late one evening, about a week after I sent the uninvited email. Ethan and I were curled up on the couch, half watching a cooking show, half finalizing vendor payments. It was the first calm night we'd had in weeks. Then Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and immediately stiffened. "What is it?" I asked, already bracing for whatever storm was brewing. He held the screen toward me, a text from Harper. "Hey, I know things are weird right now, but I really need someone to talk to. I feel like you're the only one who's actually seen me lately." I stared at the words, then at Ethan. "She's never even liked you," I said slowly. "Why would she reach out to you now?" He nodded. "I don't like it either. Something feels off." We agreed not to reply, but over the next 3 days, she kept texting, each message more intimate, more carefully manipulative. "You've always been kind to me. Juliana doesn't understand what I've been through. Sometimes I wonder if things would have been different if we'd met first." Ethan never answered a single one. He showed me every message. We screenshotted everything. Then came the final one. "I know it's wrong, but I can't stop thinking about you. I think there's something between us, Ethan. Please don't pretend there isn't." I felt a strange stillness settle over me. Not rage, just confirmation. Harper wasn't just trying to make me the villain. She wanted to destroy whatever she couldn't have for herself. Ethan looked at me. "How do you want to handle this?" I took a breath. "Block her. But screenshot everything first." He nodded and did just that. I didn't text Harper. I didn't confront her. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I opened my email attached to the screenshots and sent them to my mother along with a brief note. I hope this helps you understand why Harper is no longer welcome at the wedding. I won't be discussing this further. My mother responded within an hour. You're misinterpreting her pain. You're making this all about you. And in that moment, I knew she wasn't just unwilling to see the truth. She needed to ignore it, because otherwise she'd have to admit what she'd raised. There's a kind of silence that protects you more than any apology ever could. The morning of the wedding was quiet in the most beautiful way. The mountain air was cold and clean, the early snow dusting the trees like powdered sugar. The lodge smelled of pine and fresh-baked bread. My dress hung by the window, soft ivory against the light. For once, my hands weren't shaking. My bridesmaids floated in and out of the room, touching up makeup, adjusting veils, laughing about nothing in particular. I let their voices wash over me like music. Ethan and I had decided on a first look before the ceremony. When I stepped out into the garden and saw him waiting there, I forgot the months of stress, the messages, the whispers, the long nights. All I saw was him. This was our day. Finally. Or so I thought. 30 minutes before the ceremony, Amanda, my maid of honor, rushed into the bridal suite. Her face was pale. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Your mom and Harper are here." I blinked. What? How they showed up at the gate. Security stopped them, but they're refusing to leave. "Your mom is crying," Harper's yelling. I sat down very slowly. "What are they saying?" Amanda hesitated. "Your mom's telling the staff she just wants to see her daughter get married." Harper's louder. "She's saying you're a cold-hearted narcissist and destroying the family." For a second, I almost stood up, almost walked out there to give them a piece of my mind. But then I stopped. That's what they wanted, to pull me back into their chaos, to make themselves the center again. I looked Amanda in the eye. "Tell security to hold the line. They're not welcome." She nodded and left. I could still hear Harper's voice echoing faintly from the driveway, shrill and escalating. "You'll regret this, Juliana. You'll regret cutting out your own family." But I didn't move. The ceremony began on time. As I walked down the aisle, I didn't look toward the entrance. I looked at Ethan, at the people who had shown up with love, not leverage. We said our vows beneath twinkle lights and cedar beams. When I looked out at our guests, I didn't see who was missing. I saw who had stayed. Later, I heard Harper and my mother had been escorted off the property by staff, that my mother wept theatrically as they pulled away, that Harper threw her corsage at a security guard. But I didn't see any of it. I was too busy dancing with my husband. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is protect your joy without apology, without permission. We got back to our hotel suite just after midnight. My hair was coming undone. My shoes were off. I was exhausted in the way only joy can exhaust you. I checked my phone out of habit. 12 missed calls, 9 voicemails, all from my mother. I didn't listen to a single one. Instead, I placed my phone in the nightstand drawer, turned off the lamp, and fell asleep next to my husband, no longer a fiancé, no longer a daughter waiting to be chosen. The next morning, as we packed to leave for our short honeymoon in Asheville, my cousin Megan called. "You're not going to believe what happened last night," she said, almost breathless. "They had a massive fight, like, full-on screaming. I didn't even need to ask who." Apparently, after being escorted out of the wedding, Harper and my mother went home, and the cracks that had been forming for years finally split wide open. Harper blamed my mom for not doing enough to stop the wedding. She screamed that Mom should have made me cancel, should have fought harder, that all of this was her fault. And for the first time in what might have been decades, my mother pushed back. She told Harper to stop blaming everyone else for the mess she kept making. Told her she needed to grow up. Take responsibility. The fight ended with my mother kicking Harper out of the house. "She's staying with a friend now," Megan said. But honestly, no one's running after her. I sat on the edge of the bed listening. Not surprised, not angry. Just done. I'd spent a lifetime being the one who bent, who smoothed things over, who gave up space so Harper could feel whole. Now, I'd simply stepped out of the equation, and they'd turned on each other. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't victory, it was gravity. At the reception, we'd left a small reserved seat by the fireplace, a name card placed delicately on the cushion. Harper Hale. It stayed empty all night. Nobody asked why. Nobody tried to fill it. And that somehow was the most honest moment of all. They were never missing from my life. They were just never really in it.